In the sleepy town of Willow Creek, where church bells chimed louder than gossip and faith was never questioned, Eleanor Grayson was worshipped like a saint. Beautiful, commanding, and deeply devout, she led the Guiding Light Church with a voice that could make sinners weep. At her side was her 20-year-old son Caleb, silent and obedient, the perfect image of a God-fearing family. But behind stained glass windows and whispered prayers, a horrifying secret festered. One journalist, Sarah, what she found would expose a sacred facade built on manipulation, incest, and generations of abuse, tearing apart a town that had mistaken evil for righteousness. This is the story of a mother who claimed God spoke through her, and a son who couldn't escape her grip. Willow Creek, small town cradled in the emerald folds of Oregon's hills, was a place where time seemed to pause. Its 3,000 residents lived simple lives bound by tradition and faith, with the Guiding Light Church at the heart of their community. The church, a whitewashed building with a modest steeple, stood on a grassy knoll, its stained glass windows glowing under the Pacific Northwest sun. Eleanor Grayson, a striking woman of 48 with piercing blue eyes and a voice that could soothe or command, was its revered leader. Her sermons, delivered with a fervor that seemed to channel divine light, drew hundreds every Sunday. She spoke of salvation, of a world cleansed by devotion, and her followers hung on every word. Eleanor, a widow since her husband's death a decade earlier, lived in a quaint cottage on the edge of town with her only son Caleb, a lanky 19-year-old with soft brown hair and a quiet demeanor that bordered on invisible to the townsfolk. Eleanor and Caleb were a picture of piety. Their home, adorned with wooden crosses and framed Bible verses, was a shrine to their faith. Eleanor's garden bloomed with roses, which she often brought to church as offerings, their scent mingling with the incense during services. Caleb, always at her side, helped with church duties, setting up chairs, passing out hymnals, and occasionally reading scripture in a voice so soft it barely carried. The town saw their bond as a testament to family values, a mother and son united in service to God. But there were subtle signs, noticed by most, that hinted at something amiss. Caleb rarely spoke to others his age, his eyes often fixed on the ground, as if weighed down by an unseen burden. Neighbors occasionally saw him lingering on the porch late at night, staring into the darkness, while Eleanor's silhouette moved behind the curtains, her presence constant. The whispers began, quietly, like ripples on a still pond. A grocer mentioned Caleb's reluctance to meet her gaze when he bought supplies, always checking his phone as if awaiting instructions. A school teacher, retired but still active in the community, recalled Caleb's sudden withdrawal from high school activities, despite his talent in writing and debate. The churchgoers, however, dismissed these observations. Eleanor was their shepherd, her charisma a shield against doubt. She spoke of Caleb as her blessed companion, a term that felt warm to some, but oddly possessive to others. Loyalty to her was unshakable, built on years of her leading food drives, visiting the sick, and offering counsel to the grieving. Yet beneath the surface of this idyllic scene, a shadow grew. Something was wrong in the Grayson household, something that would soon unravel the carefully woven tapestry of their lives. As the seasons turned, Guiding Light Church grew in influence, its congregation swelling with newcomers drawn by Eleanor's magnetic presence. Her sermons took on a new intensity, weaving tales of divine tests and sacred bonds that transcended earthly understanding. She often spoke of Caleb, framing him as a vessel of purity, chosen to carry her mission forward. Congregation nodded, captivated, but a few began to notice peculiarities. During services, Eleanor's hand would rest on Caleb's shoulder, her fingers tracing small circles, a gesture that lingered too long to be maternal. Caleb, now 20, seemed smaller in her presence, his shoulders hunched, his smile forced. He had abandoned his plans for college, claiming a divine calling to serve the church full-time. The decision puzzled some, as Caleb had once dreamed of studying literature. His essays winning local awards. Sarah Kline, 32-year-old journalist for the Willow Creek Gazette, was one of the few who questioned the Graysons' dynamic. A transplant. From Portland, Sarah had a knack for spotting stories beneath the surface. She began attending services, notepad in hand, blending into the pews with her unassuming demeanor. She observed Eleanor's commanding presence, the way her eyes scanned the room, as if ensuring every soul was hers. Sarah noticed Caleb's discomfort when Eleanor spoke of their unbreakable bond, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of his sweater. Outside the church, Sarah pieced together fragments of Eleanor's past. Born into a strict religious family, Eleanor had fled an abusive home at 17, married young, and lost her husband Thomas in a car accident when Caleb was 9. The official report listed it as a single-vehicle crash. But Sarah uncovered rumors of Thomas's unease with Eleanor's growing obsession with spirituality. Late at night, Sarah drove past the Grayson cottage, its windows glowing with a soft, eerie light. Neighbors had reported strange sounds, rhythmic chants, low murmurs, and once, a stifled cry that sent chills down a passerby's spine. Sarah's curiosity deepened when she interviewed a former church volunteer, Martha, who had left after. Feeling uneasy about Eleanor's private rituals with Caleb, Martha described closed-door meetings in the church basement, where Eleanor claimed to be cleansing her son's spirit. The volunteer's voice trembled as she recalled Eleanor's insistence that these sessions were holy, ordained, CDICTED. Sarah's instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong, but proof remained elusive. She began to dig deeper, unaware of the storm her questions would unleash. The breakthrough came in the form of an anonymous email sent to Sarah's work address in the dead of night. Attached was a grainy photograph, taken through a window of the Grayson home. It showed Eleanor and Caleb in a dimly lit room, surrounded by flickering candles. Eleanor's hands cupped Caleb's face, her expression intense, his unreadable. The image was ambiguous, but its intimacy was unsettling. Sarah's pulse quickened as she studied the photo, her mind racing with possibilities. Days later, a second tip arrived, a package containing pages torn from a journal, smuggled out by a church member who had grown suspicious of Eleanor's teachings. The writings were a revelation, penned in Eleanor's precise handwriting. They described a divine union between mother and son, a ritual she claimed was ordained by God to purify Caleb's soul and bind them eternally. The journal's language was both poetic and disturbing, blending scripture with personal obsession. Eleanor wrote of Caleb as her sacred vessel, his body a temple for her divine mission. The rituals, conducted in secret, involved prayers, oils, and what she called acts of consecration. The implications were horrifying. Eleanor had manipulated Caleb into a sexual relationship, cloaking it in religious fervor to justify her actions. Sarah's stomach churned as she read, the words painting a portrait of a woman whose faith had twisted into delusion. The journalist faced a moral quandary. Exposing Eleanor would tear the town apart, pitting believers against skeptics. But silence meant allowing a predator to continue her abuse. Sarah chose to act, drafting an article that laid bare the journal's contents and the photograph's implications. Before publishing, Sarah confronted Eleanor at the church, hoping for a denial or explanation. Eleanor's response was calm, her smile unwavering as she dismissed the accusations as attacks on her faith. Caleb, standing nearby, said nothing, his eyes fixed on the floor. Sarah left, shaken but determined. Her article, published in the Gazette, detailed the journal's contents and the photograph, carefully avoiding direct accusations to protect Caleb. The story hit Willow Creek like a wildfire, igniting debates in coffee shops and living rooms. Some called Sarah a liar, a city outsider stirring trouble. Others, troubled by the evidence, began to question their beloved leader. The police, alerted by the article, obtained a warrant to search the Grayson home, uncovering more journals. That confirmed Sarah's findings. But the investigation was far from over, and a shocking twist awaited. The police search revealed a locked box hidden beneath Eleanor's bedroom floorboards, containing letters and photographs from her past. Among them was a faded image of a young Eleanor with a teenage boy, their poses eerily similar to the recent photo with Caleb. The boy, identified through records as Eleanor's younger brother, Daniel, had vanished 25 years earlier, his disappearance unexplained. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation, suggesting a pattern of behavior that spanned decades. Sarah's article had cracked open a Pandora's box, and the town turned on her. Her car was vandalized, its windows smashed with Brick's threatening notes appeared at her doorstep, accusing her of blasphemy. The church rallied around Eleanor, painting her as a martyr persecuted by a godless media. Caleb, now 21, was interviewed by detectives in a sterile room at the county sheriff's office. His responses were halting, his voice barely above a whisper. He described years of Eleanor's manipulation. Beginning when he was 15, she had convinced him their relationship was a divine mandate, secret they must keep to protect the church. Caleb's shame and confusion were palpable, his loyalty to his mother warring with the truth. The journals provided further evidence, detailing rituals that grew increasingly invasive, Eleanor's words framing them as acts of love and salvation. The town's division deepened, with protests outside the courthouse demanding Eleanor's release. Sarah, now a pariah, received an anonymous call warning her to leave Willow Creek or face consequences. The second photograph changed everything. Investigators reopened Daniel's case, suspecting Eleanor's involvement in his disappearance. No body was found, but a rusted knife, stained with traces of blood, was discovered in the church's basement, buried beneath old hymnals. Forensic tests were inconclusive, but the implication was damning. Eleanor's past, once a footnote, became a focal point. Records showed she had been questioned briefly about Daniel's disappearance, but her grief-stricken demeanor had deflected suspicion. Now the parallels between Daniel and Caleb suggested a chilling cycle of abuse. The police pressed Caleb for details, but his memories of his uncle were vague, clouded by years of Eleanor's influence. The case grew more complex, and Sarah's life grew more dangerous as the truth edged closer to the surface. The reckoning, the trial of Eleanor Grayson, was a spectacle that drew national attention. Reporters crowded Willow Creek's courthouse, a gray stone building dwarfed by satellite vans and camera crews. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, the journals, the photographs, and Caleb's testimony, delivered in a trembling voice that silenced the courtroom. He recounted Eleanor's manipulation, her ability to twist scripture into a weapon that bound him to her. The defense argued that Eleanor was a devout woman misunderstood by a secular world, her writings metaphorical expressions of faith, but the journal's explicit details undermined their claims, painting a portrait of a woman who believed her actions were divinely sanctioned. A bombshell dropped mid-trial. A former church member, now elderly, testified about seeing Eleanor and Daniel in a compromising situation decades earlier. The woman, shunned by the church for her suspicions, had kept silent out of fear. Her testimony reignited the investigation into Daniel's disappearance, though no charges were filed due to lack of physical evidence. Eleanor took the stand, her composure unshaken. She spoke of her love for Caleb as a sacred duty, her voice steady, her eyes blazing with conviction. The jury, however, saw through her facade, convicting her of multiple counts of abuse and coercion. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Her name struck from the church's records. Caleb, broken by the ordeal, left Willow Creek, his whereabouts unknown. Some said he sought therapy in a distant city. Others claimed he vanished into the wilderness, unable to face the world. The Guiding Light Church closed its doors, its congregation scattered, its once hallowed halls now a ghost of their former glory. Sarah Kline, hounded by threats, relocated to Seattle, her career in tatters, but her conscience clear. She published a book about the case, hoping to warn others of charismatic Horley system, the dangers of unchecked charisma.
Out of Willow Creek.
Never recovered its innocence, the town forever marked by the scandal. The Grayson cottage was sold, its roses left to wither. The truth, once hidden behind Eleanor's holy veil, had destroyed a family and a community, proving that even the most sacred facades could conceal the darkest sins.